Professor Murthy, just to confirm, so the monitoring of the chat for questions, you want Professor Baishali and me to both?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay.
Vaishali and yourself will manage.
Yeah, Dr. Viraj.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel anyway you will be introducing the speaker, right? After that,
Yes.
you continue till the end of the question answer session. That will be, I think it will go smoothly.
Sure.
So
sure.
you can call out.
I will. Yeah, I will.
Yes.
I will keep an eye on the chat, and as
Yes.
there are questions.
Sure.
Then I can pose those to him.
Pose those. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks,
Yes.
can just note down a few key questions,
Yes.
right, which have some value.
Okay.
In case there is some confusion, you can clear it out. That's what my sense was.
Okay.
We'll ask Viraj to it.
Yes.
But my mic is unfortunately not
Oh.
muted. It's okay.
No, I will tell him to mute because you have to be there. Otherwise, it's something.
Professor Murthy, if there is already a list of questions that have been created, can that be sent across to me so that I can make sure I don't miss those?
Sure. I'll do.
Yeah, thank you. I think I heard Professor Vaishali saying that she was doing something along those lines, but I think she's on a call. Yeah.
Yes. I have
If there are any ready-made questions, you can send it to us to that. Hello. I'm getting understanding. In case Vice Chairman can join anytime now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll do it.
Keep watching. You can also make unmute Professor Kincha and Professor Jairaj.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so just join.
Done, sir.
Yeah. Good morning, sir.
Vice Chairman, sir, you're muted right now.
I'm unable to unmute myself.
Good morning. Good morning,
Yeah,
sir.
we can hear you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Because I think I was muted remotely.
Imtiaz.
Good morning to you.
Viraj?
Yes, sir. We're
Yeah,
ready
you
from
can-
our side whenever.
Whenever sir comes in, please let us know.
Fine. I'll let you know. Yeah.
And show your video also. Yeah.
Fine, sir. Dr. Rangan is joining us right now.
Yeah. Good.
Unmuted, sir.
Sir, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to meet you, Professor Murthy.
Yes, sir. So we have our Pro-Chancellor, Dr. Premchand Sagar.
Sir,
Okay, please.
good morning.
Greetings to you.
Sir. And we're extremely grateful to you, sir, for having consented to deliver the first lecture for the university, the commemoration address. Thank you very much, sir. We're indeed very grateful to you.
Thank you. I am very privileged.
Good morning, sir. Dr. Kincha here, sir. Dr. Kincha here. Good morning to you, sir. Good morning to you, sir. How are you keeping, sir? How are you keeping, sir?
I'm fine.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Where are
Kincha,
you
sir,
now,
good morning.
Professor Kincha? You
Sir,
are
I'm-
at the institute or elsewhere?
No, sir, I'm at home only now, but
Okay.
work is there. I've been selected as an expert for the European Commission now.
Oh, wonderful. Congrats.
So yesterday was a 5-hour meeting with them. So this is
I
how
see.
the days go on. So
That's nice. So you are as active as always.
sir, with your good wishes, sir, always with your good
Always
wishes.
there, Professor Kincha.
Always,
Nice.
sir.
Very nice.
Sure, sir. they're having calls for about $18 million projects,
Oh, I see.
both from European and Indian institutions,
Oh, I see.
jointly with DST and the European Commission.
Okay.
These projects are all on clean energy related projects. Clean
Oh, I
energy.
see. That's great.
So
We have now institutions identified for this in India now?
yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Vaishali madam, we are going to start exact at 11.
Yes, one more.
Sure, sir. Yes.
One more minute to go.
Yeah.
Jairaj sir, good morning.
Can I start?
Yes,
Yes, sir. So we will start.
Yes, sir.
Yes, madam, please start.
A very good morning to all our distinguished guests, faculties, participants, and students. It's my absolute pleasure to extend a warm word of welcome to each and everyone present here for the DSU Foundation Commemoration Lecture 2020. To commemorate the inception of the university in 2015, we arranged the DSU Commemoration Lectures by highly accomplished scholars. Today we have with us our special guest, Dr. K. Kasturirangan, former chairman of Indian Space Research Organization. I request our Honorable Vice Chairman, Sir, Dr. Prem Chandra Sagar, for the opening remarks and also to welcome the chief guest. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vaishali. Thank you very much. Respected Dr. K. Kasturirangan, former chairman of ISRO and the former chairman of the Committee for the National Education Policy. Respected Dr. HPC Kincha, the former Vice Chancellor of VTU and the evangelist for DSU. Shri K. Jairaj, the former Additional Chief Secretary, Government of Karnataka and Member Board of Governors of Dayanand Sagar University. Dr. K. Balasubramanya Murthy, the Vice Chancellor of Dayanand Sagar University. Dr. Muthu Chelian, the Pro Vice Chancellor of DSU. Mr. Janardhan, the Pro Vice Chancellor of DSU. Mr. Galiswamy, the Secretary of the sponsoring body of DSU. Dr. Puttumadappa, the Registrar of DSU. The Deans of various schools of Dayanand Sagar University, distinguished faculty members, ladies and gentlemen. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome each of you to the first Dayanand Sagar University Foundation Commemoration Lecture of 2020. It seems like not so long ago that the journey to establish a world-class university began with great earnest in the years 2012 and 2013. A year of historic moment for the higher education sector in Karnataka. A benevolent government in the state with a far-sighted vision encouraged education institutions with a good track record to start private universities. Dayanand Sagar institutions had by then proved for itself as one of the top educational institutions in the country with a strong base in the state of Karnataka. DSI had the experience of not just dealing with a diverse body of students and faculty coming from all over the country, but a significant number of students from different parts of the world. The ground thus was set for the official flagging off of the university. The years 2015 and 2016 marked the year when Dayanand Sagar University opened its doors, offering regular academic programs in diverse fields of study. DSU is now considered a leader in professional education in the state. The programs on offer include medicine, pharmacy, nursing, physiotherapy, biological sciences, engineering, commerce and management, and vocational studies. DSU covers all levels of study that include bachelor's, master's, and doctoral programs. DSU is also now active in the executive education domain, catering to the educational needs of a large segment of working professionals. Research and innovation are the USPs of DSU. As evidence is the state-of-the-art laboratories established at the Innovation Center at DSU with technological support from large multinational companies. This was followed by establishing the Atal Incubation Center and DSU Foundation that is supported by Niti Aayog, Government of India, with a very liberal 10 crore grant. Derby, a unique accelerator and incubator, also at the School of Engineering, has a similar support from the Department of Science and Technology. Students and faculty, not only from the campuses under Dayanand Sagar, but from all other colleges are encouraged to use these laboratories and innovators and the innovation labs to pursue the path of innovation and entrepreneurship. DSU, with a majority of passing out batches enjoying good placements, is today accepted as a top educational powerhouse. DSU enjoys academic partnerships with prestigious universities in the United States and elsewhere. Similarly, DSU has very strong partnerships with industry and other premier research bodies. We are today on a strong footing. We have done well and we are confident that we will continue to move in the right direction. The full campus, the new campus that is being commissioned at Harohalli has a capacity to accommodate 20,000 students and 20,000 students and faculty spread on 130 acres on the Bengaluru-Kanakapura highway, is now getting ready for the official launch in October 2020 with the opening of the medical school and the teaching hospital. The first 5-year period marks the end and start of a great journey. To commemorate this great landmark, Dayanand Sagar University has taken a decision to invite outstanding scientists and academicians of great accomplishments to deliver commemoration lectures. The first among a series of lectures is being delivered by India's pride, a scientist of global repute, Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan, the former chairman of ISRO and the former chairman for the Committee of the National Education Policy. We all know that the National Education Policy is going to completely transform the way with which that education is going to be delivered in India, and I'm sure it would bring in a very refreshing change in the years ahead and empower Indians to become global citizens. These lectures undoubtedly would be a great learning material for generations to come. Thus, DSU would compile these tasks for posterity in all formats and put it on the public domain. I deem it a great privilege to welcome Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan, who is with us today. Sir, you are a person of great eminence. A warm welcome to you, and thank you, sir, for having consented to deliver the first DSU commemoration lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your opening remarks. I would now like to invite Dr. Viraj Kumar, Research Professor of DSU, for introducing our today's chief guest and speaker, Dr. K. Kasturirangan. Over
Thank
to
you.
Dr. Viraj Kumar.
Thank you, Vaishali.
Thank you.
So it's a wonderful honor and privilege to introduce our speaker for the DSU Foundation Commemoration Lecture 2020, Dr. K. Kasturirangan. You know, before July 2017, if you had asked any Indian the question, who is Dr. Kasturirangan, they would probably have said, he's one of our top space scientists. Some would know more details about his remarkable career with ISRO, culminating as chairman for a staggeringly successful period from 1994 to 2003. Others would remember his 6-year stint as a member of the Rajya Sabha and then as a member of the erstwhile Planning Commission. But if you ask that question today, you will get a different answer. Today, although Dr. Kasturirangan holds numerous positions, including Chancellor at Central University of Rajasthan, Chairman of the governing body of IUCA, member of the Atomic Energy Commission, Honorary Distinguished Advisor at ISRO, and although he is a member of all 4 National Science Academies, as well as a member of the International Astronomical Union, a Fellow of the World Academy of Sciences, an Honorary Fellow at Cardiff University, an academician at the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, and the only Indian to be conferred the honorary membership of the International Academy of Astronautics, besides being its vice president from 2003 to 2005. And although he has won several awards, including the Brock Medal, the Alan D. Emil Memorial Award, the Theodore von Karman Award, and the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award, and although he has been conferred the Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, and Padma Vibhushan by the President of India, and the Rajotsava Prashasti from the government of Karnataka, and the award of Officer of the Legion d'Honneur by the President of France. Today and forevermore, ladies and gentlemen, if you ask any Indian who Dr. Kasturirangan is, the first answer you will hear is Chairman of the committee that drafted India's National Education Policy, NEP 2020. In July 2017, when Dr. Kasturirangan took charge of the process, many of us might have wondered, why is a space scientist heading this committee? Of course, most of us only see these external labels. Had we known Dr. Kasturirangan, we might just as well have asked, why is someone with an unerring eye for detail heading this committee? Why is someone with a track record of fostering consensus amongst experts with differing opinions heading this committee? Why is someone who has the courage to stand for what is right for our country heading this committee? Today, sir, you have taken time out from your relentless schedule to share with us the framework for education in India as laid out in this remarkable 66-page document. On behalf of the entire DSU family, and with immense gratitude, I thank you and warmly invite you to deliver the commemoration lecture. Over to you, sir.
Thank you and good morning. Professor, Pro Vice Chancellor, Dr. Premachandra Sagar, Professor Vice Chancellor, Professor Murthy, my dear old friend, Professor Kincha, who is here. Very nice to meet him in this function. And a very dynamic colleague of mine, Dr. K. Jairaj, whom I did not expect him to be here, but he's here today. I'm so happy to see him. And of course, Professor Viraj Kumar, who have been a very tremendous role in the formulation of this national education policy, working with technical secretariat and many other aspects of responsibilities here. Members of the faculty of the Dayanand Sagar University, distinguished guests, and students. At the outset, let me express my privilege, express my pride and grateful thanks to Dr. Premchandra Sagar, Dr. Murthy, and others for this unique honor done to me, asking me to give the first of the foundation commemoration lecture is really remembering its pioneer. Late Sri Dayanand Sagar was an exceptional human being. He had many qualities built into one, whether it is related to the questions of education, the questions of being a great lawyer, being a powerhouse of knowledge. He has been always inquisitive to learn more and more. And he was a believer in transforming the world, besides being a leader of par excellence. And he created this Mahatma Gandhi Vidya Pida for education trust in 60s. And this university, of course, is an offshoot of that initiative. And what is significant is over 60 years of carefully building building institutions, he also created an alumni, which is 100,000 today, accomplished professionals, lawmakers, sports personalities, celebrities spread across the world. So if this is the kind of a credential that you're talking of for the founder, you can imagine what his future also is going to be. Certainly, the legacy and the heritage of the founder is sure to reflect not only currently in its excellence performance, but also for the future when this is to go into higher levels of performance and achievements in the years to come. So I use this opportunity to pay my own humble tributes to the founder, Sri Dayanand Sagar, on this very important and august occasion. His illustrious successors, Dr. Hemachandra Sagar and Dr. Premachandra Sagar, and I'm happy that Dr. Premachandra Sagar is with us, have carried forward his legacy. And Dr. Premachandra Sagar has been promoting a number of institutions in this country, and particularly he has been trying to create more and more educational institutions of variety of type. I see here that there is already initiative with regard to the starting of a hospital. He had already had a role in the creation of the Dayanand Sagar College of Engineering, one of the best institutions in this country at this stage. He has served in various capacities in promoting education. And most importantly, he is also currently in the process of looking at starting two important initiatives, which I was trying to see. One is, of course, this Dr. Chandramma Dayanand Sagar Medical Education and Research is a new institution that is currently being thought out. And the other one is to conceptualize an educational technology-driven academy for faculty professional development. I think these are really very critical development that this institution is witnessing currently, and I'm sure is also a pointer to the shape of things that are to come in the coming years. Now that is over. So I use this opportunity again to greet all the members of the management, the Vice Chancellor, the faculty, students, and members of staff on this August occasion. Of course, my story about saying a few names in this introductory remarks will not be complete without saying a few words about Professor Murthy, whom I knew earlier with the PES institutions. He is an excellent leader, a great visionary, a good educationist, and a recognized academician. I think all are important qualities to lead institutions. And this institution is sure to find in him an exceptionally good visionary leader to fulfill the directions and the path that is laid out by the founders. I think you have found the right man. I wish you, Professor Modi, the very best in the coming years in leading this institution to higher levels of achievements and things of that kind. I also find here that the Dayanand institution certainly is focused on teaching, research and innovation and entrepreneurship, something which is now being taught about in quite a bit of thing. In fact, we did work and discuss quite a lot on this question of teaching, research and innovation as the components of a university system. And I do see the focus that this university has on these areas. It has created a multidisciplinary environment in UG, PG, whether it is in medicine, whether it is in engineering, commerce, management, arts, journalism. So many of the subjects which are today being taught in this university has the potential of becoming a tremendous base for going to the next step. And I will say a few words about it as I move forward the undergraduate education. But these are the components and more of it that will come up in the coming years that will add to the strength of this institution in trying to project itself as a multidisciplinary university. Initially, it could be a teaching university, but I am sure it will move toward a research university, one of the few that we are thinking of in this country in the next 10 years or so. The new initiatives I mentioned about it, and the important thing I again would like to see is besides the medical education and research, which are important in the context of the present needs of the healthcare system and also the education and the research part of it, conceptualizing an educational technology is truly a visionary step. I hope that it takes the shape in which it will be one of the examples in this country of educational technology driven academic system, which I think is going to be the order of the day in the years to come. I'll say again a few words about it in my own presentation about the new education policy. And the three paradigm shift, I saw it in the university's write-up: context-driven curriculum, intelligence-driven learning, and connecting data. I think these are the kind of thing that one is looking for from a university system. And I see those kind of elements now being there as a part of this important institution. And you have also identified the culture of autonomy and accountability. A little bit of it I will also mention. Again, a few characteristics which has to have its role in the context of creating excellence in the university system, with, of course, transparency in the governance. And ultimately, you have written that you are committed to implementing the NEP 2020. Certainly, NEP 2020, a lot of thought have got into it, not only because of the committee members here, but also because of the type of inputs we got, a huge amount of analysis that was carried out by different quarters. And these are all the kind of thing that ultimately led to the formulation of this policy. And before I go into the details of the policy itself, I would like to say a few things about the relevance of education in the present context. Why is it that the government decided that we should now have a new education policy? And secondly, the kind of path that we adopted in the next year or so in trying to formulate this policy, the spirit behind the policy, rather than getting into the details of the policy per se. India, as you know, if you look at the relevance of education, India will have the highest population of young people in the world over. We know the demographic dividend that we are talking of, more than 50% below 35 years of age, aspiring for high quality education. This has to be taken advantage of, and there is an urgency to do that because next 10 years is critical in this context. Globalization and demands of a knowledge economy and knowledge society call for emphasis on the need for acquisition of new skills by learners on a regular basis. It is not a one-stop process. You need to have a regular basis to learn this. Changes that are going to happen uh, a dynamic character of the society in terms of the learning atmosphere. For them to learn how to learn is more important than to learn itself, and become a lifelong learner is a critical consideration which we have addressed, which is most appropriate in the present juncture. Changes in knowledge landscape, especially science and technology advances, big data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all demand skilled workforce. This involves mathematics, computer sciences, data science, and many other kind of a thing. And of course, so is true with many other subjects that we can think of, whether in sciences, social sciences, and humanities. And ultimately, the education of future need to be reconfigured in order to meet the goals of global. Ultimately, we are now a part of the global knowledge system, global economy, and we have to meet a global, therefore we are committed also to a part of being a part of the goals of a global educational development agenda, the goal 4 of the sustainable development goal 4 of 2030, that seeks to ensure inclusion and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So these are the kind of considerations that made the government to decide that it is time for us to now relook at the educational scenario and then come out with a policy which will be most appropriate to drive the knowledge society that India should be in the 21st century. I'll give a quick more for the sake of completion. I would like to say a little bit about the process that we adopted. Of course, we went through quite a lot of, it was not the committee alone. The committee only laid down the strategy how to move on it. They were knowledgeable people. They were extremely erudite in terms of their own subjects. Therefore, the members of the policy committee, we had people like Professor Manjul Bhargav, who is a mathematician from Princeton University. We had Professor Vasudha Kamath, Professor M.K. Sridhar, and many others who had their lifelong association with education. Then we had also a drafting committee where we get people like Professor Ramachandran, Professor Anurag Bell, who are all spent again their lifetime in education and who had the insight into what the issues of the education is in this country. Then we had the members of the technical secretariat who really made a lot of analysis of the various data that was coming in and the kind of patterns that were there, the kind of conclusion that we can draw from those patterns, and how those patterns then becomes a part of a policy formulation. In fact, I'm happy to say that Professor Viraj Kumar played a very critical role in trying to do a lot of analysis of the various aspects of data. The huge amount of data were available. After all, this is not a data which is only created yesterday or today, but in fact, the drafting committee's predecessor, which of TSR Subramaniam, they themselves had worked for 4 years and created an enormous database and analysis. So they had to be all revisited. We looked at this, and ultimately to make sure that we are still on the right direction, we appointed a set of peer reviewers, the people who have excelled, who are not a part of this evaluation or formulation, but who had the necessary in-depth understanding of the issues of educational system. Such people we brought to bear, whether it could be relative, it could be Professor Dinesh Singh, or Professor, there's a very a professor from Hyderabad. Then we had people like Mohandas Pai, we had Professor Aji Kelkar. They were all people who have in some way or other associated deeply with education, though really served as the peer reviewers for this. So many things we did, we discussions and consultations with stakeholders, policy documents were revisited and studied, public domain responses, we ultimately put it into the public domain. And I should say we got more than 2.5 lakh responses for the public domain. Consultation with state educational authorities was another aspect of it. Then in the final stage of the policy document was reviewed at the level of the Honorable Prime Minister. He had 3-4 sittings himself, going through sitting for hours, going through the details of each of the policy element and trying to look at it with respect to the pragmatism, the ability to implement it, and the kind of demand that will put on the various types of resources, and the timeliness, and whether we can do it in certain timeliness. So these were things which Honorable Prime Minister himself carefully looked into it. And more recently, now we have embarked on major conferences with chancellors, vice chancellors, other high-level functionaries convened. They were convened both by Honorable Prime Minister as well as by His Excellency the President of India. This has been now become a pattern, along with the state governors who have been holding their own conference with respect to the state level educational promotion of the NEP 1 to 2020. So now we are moving towards the next important step of the strategy for the actual actions with respect to implementation. Now, the framework for the policy document, if you just put it in the broad sense, the policy provides an integrated and flexible approach to education. Further, it has kept the interconnectedness of the various phases of education in mind and how the same will enable continuity, coherence, and processes to ultimately realize an end-to-end educational roadmap. So one of the important things that we have made sure is, even as the policy is flexible, there is an interconnectedness, and this interconnectedness enable an end-to-end system of definition of what the educational roadmap for the country should be. An articulation of the broad view of education encompassing holistic development with special emphasis on kindling of the creative potential of individual in all its richness and complexity has grown increasingly popular in the recent years. I'm talking particularly with respect to the holistic development, the emphasis of the education on holistic development and all-rounded development of an individual or a youngster. The policy thus aims at the development of the 21st century skills for the student while giving enough flexibility in making choices consistent with the dynamics of a knowledge society. So this is something which has been always in our mind while formulating every element of the policy in different themes. Now, before I go into the higher education, which is the current interest for all the members here, I would like to say a little bit about the connection between the high school education and the higher education, because this policy recognizes the interconnectedness. I said that earlier, and therefore the various phases of education they are not isolated and they are not segmented, but they are all part of an interconnected system, an end-to-end system for the education. School education is of intrinsic importance. There is no question on that. How a student experiences the school phase of education could have a significant influence on those who subsequently pursue higher education, besides, of course, helping to lay the foundation for lifelong learning. So that is the way in which the connections have been seen, and therefore I spend a little time with what the school education we have tried to define in the policy. The extent 10+2 structure, which has been a part of this educational system, will be modified with a new pedagogical and curricular structure to make it 5+3+3+4, covering the ages 3 to 18. So in this connection, 5+3+3+4, it is a policy in trying to come to this. You are talking of a 3-year pre-primary and class 1-2 as a part of a foundational component of the education, the early school phase, ages 3 to 8, followed by preparatory, which is 8 to 11, which is classes 3 to 5, and then another 3 years in the middle level, and ultimately the secondary, which is the 4 years. Now, what does it, why this kind of a classification at the present juncture? The policy recognizes the individual differences of the cognitive development of children. See, one of the things that has happened with the last policy and the present policy is the fact that we do recognize that the child's brain growth happens in the 82% was 82 to 85% of the child's growth happens by the age of 8. And much of the development, brain development, has to be associated with the new way of learning, new way of understanding fundamentals, so that you are able to go forward with more complex ideas. So this aspect of the fact that you have to have it all done properly with respect to age, which is especially what is related to the numeracy and the literacy, the ability to learn languages, the ability to do mathematics, especially the arithmetic and things of that kind. That is what is necessary in the first 5 years. And because the cognitive development of the children, they also, not every children goes the same trajectory. So you need to have child-centric education, which is specific to various cases. Therefore, a formal structured learning will be absent during the 5 years. You try to learn, you try to play-based thing and things of that kind. So team-based thing. And so this is the period in which the unstructured, you cannot have books, you cannot have a structured learning as we do it in the regular schools. But this foundational 5 years is critical if you want to take advantage of the fact that the brain growth is maximum and almost reaches up to 85% of the final value. And equally importantly, the differences in the development of the brain for individual youngsters, which has to be also a part of addressing the question of the learning teaching process. From there, the curricular structure and standardization will be slowly introduced. And then, so you have the advantage of the fact that you can bring in books and teachers at this stage a little more formally. And then the policy takes into account, they start learning, having the capacity of abstraction. That is where the middle class, middle level youngsters come into picture. So they can start learning subjects. They can differentiate between different subjects of the kind. So initially, whereas the preparatory phase, you try to get an all-rounded information and you try to learn them. In the middle level, you try to look at specific subjects. So you can get into that level, and also with the teacher, and in a level of abstraction that is possible because of the comprehensive capability of the youngsters. And finally, the last 4 years, there will be a multidisciplinary orientation. This is where the most important aspect of it, we try to make sure that this multidisciplinarity is that will do away with the questions of the curricular, co-curricular, extracurricular, professional versus vocational, arts versus sciences. So these kind of structured learning is done away with. There is an integration, there is a multidisciplinarity, there is some approach to the holistic part, and this is how you prepare a youngster at the end of the secondary school, and it also equips him either to go for a job, which could be of vocational nature or a professional nature, or go for an undergraduate program where you try to go for further higher learning through what we do now we will see as a liberal arts education. So now I move out of the school towards the holistic undergraduate education. The policy aims to promote holistic and multi. I said this with respect to the kind of thing that the secondary school education will initially introduce the youngsters with respect to the holisticity and multidisciplinarity to make sure that there is something total and all-rounded development that is critical so far the youngsters is concerned. And so this is now carried forward into the undergraduate education in terms of a holistic and multidisciplinary education at EG level to generate more imagination and creativity in the student to ensure their all-rounded development. The concept is also termed as liberal education. It's an age-old idea in the Indian context. In Banamatta's Kadambari, if you look at it, a person has been recognized to be truly educated when he mastered the 64 kalas. These kalas are what we today know as arts, encompassing music, dance, painting, sculpture, languages, and literature, in addition to subjects such as science, engineering, and mathematics, as well as vocational subjects such as carpentry and those kind of things. Liberal education, this is the liberal education that I'm talking of, explores the remarkable relationship that exists among the sciences and humanities, mathematics and arts, medicine and physics, and things of that kind, and more generally, the surprising unity of all forms of human endeavor. This is what we have clearly enunciated in the NEP 2020, and which essentially means that there is something holistic about the education and they are not in silos. A comprehensive liberal education develops all capacities of human beings: intellectual, aesthetics, social, physical, emotional, and moral in an integrated manner. So that is what I would like to introduce to you as the liberal education, a holistic and multidisciplinary approach. Now, how do we get into towards a more holistic undergraduate education? As a crucial step to lead India into the 21st century and the fourth industrial revolution, multidisciplinary education is central. This is becoming clear from various experiences in the Western world. You know how this has been now fully taken in the Ivy schools and many other kind of a thing. Even engineering schools such as IITs, they had earlier a mandate to go into this kind of a educational system, but somewhere it got disconnected. And engineering became the core areas of IIT education, but now it is being revisited. Even engineering schools such as IITs will move towards more holistic multidisciplinary education with more arts and humanities, while art and humanities students will learn more science, while all will make an effort to incorporate more educational subjects and soft skills. India's rich legacy in the arts as well as sciences beyond will significantly help in making the move towards such an education an easy and natural transition. In fact, in the beginning, when I said that after seeing your own universities, the bouquet of subjects that you teach, there is really some very good possibility that imaginatively this can be transformed into the kind of thing that I am talking here on a holistic undergraduate education and even beyond. Now, what is the characteristic of this holistic education on the ground now? Liberal education with broad multidisciplinary exposure, imaginative and flexible curricular structure. You need to really bring in synergy between the different curricular structures. You have to be imaginative, because there has to be an effect of introducing one subject with another subject. Creative combinations of disciplines of study, multiple exit and entry points. This is a very important feature that we have built into the undergraduate education. Master's and doctoral education will provide research-based specialization. The 3 to 4 year undergraduate degree with multiple exit options. The 4-year program will be an undergraduate degree encompassing liberal arts or education in chosen major and minor. I don't have to go into the details of the 3 education here. Vocational subjects and later on professional education. So this is 4-year education. You get the full experience of a holistic and integrated education. You have also a provision for a 3-year program, which is a bachelor's degree. The 3 and 4-year program will lead to a degree with honors with research. So that is also possible. You can have a degree at the end of 3 years. You can have a degree with honors with research at the end of 4 years, and that kind of a possible. You can also exit at the end of a 2 year with a diploma, or a 1 year with a certificate. This provides the people who want to live at this particular point for various reasons to still pursue meaningful profession because they have been prepared for it. And also it allows you to come back later on if you want to enter into the education by where you want to, where you cut off, you can come back to it with certain fulfilling certain minimal requirements with respect to entry. Flexible master's degree programs, 2 years for those with 3-year undergraduate, 1 year with those with the 4-year undergraduate, with honors, and integrated 5-year. These are the other flexible at the master's level that the program the policy provides for. Now, if I were to the professional education, I talked a little bit about the mainstream education. Where does the professional education start? Regarding the integration, because the idea of a holisticity, which multidisciplinary means that we also include the professional education ultimately in the overall educational scheme at the undergraduate and postgraduate level. So regarding the integration of professional education with general education, the policy aims to take a holistic approach to the preparation of professionals by ensuring broad-based competencies and understanding of the social human context, a strong ethical compass in addition to the highest quality professional capacities. What is currently happening in the professional education is certainly you qualify yourself with a good professional capacity, but there are several dimensions if you want to really practice many of these professions with respect to the society where you are supposed to be a part of, whether it is broad-based competencies and understanding of the social human context, bringing ethical compass. So that is where the importance of the holisticity with respect to the professional education comes into picture. All institutions offering either professional or general education must organically evolve into multidisciplinary institution offering both by 2030. The overall higher education sector will aim to be an integrated higher education system, including professional and vocational education. Thus, this approach will be applicable to all higher educational institutions across current streams, which will eventually merge into one coherent ecosystem of higher education. So that's what our idea is between 2030 and 2035. And we need to make sure that all the higher education sector will be an integrated part of a higher education system that includes both the professional and vocational education, and in addition, of course, to the mainstream education. I go to an important component of the higher education and research. This is to catalyze the research area, a quality academic research in all fields through a new national research foundation. The research and innovation leading to knowledge creation is central to growing. I don't have to emphasize this aspect of it. A large and vibrant economy and uplifting society does need a good research and innovation system in the country. If you look at a robust ecosystem of research is today more relevant than ever in the context of climate change, population dynamic, biotechnology, expanding digital marketplace, and rise of machine learning and artificial. So you look at the kind of things that are happening. You need to have correspondingly a good research program which gives insights into what direction it is leading to, what kind of new possibilities are there, and how we'll add to a narrow knowledge base, which then becomes a part of an applied research program to translational research to industrial research and other areas. So you have this whole interconnectedness that comes in through the lecture. So this is what we call as an integrated research component and not necessarily only the pure research part of it. I just want to see one example, the European Union. It has estimated that 2/3 of the economic growth of Europe during 95 to 2007 came from research and innovation. Okay? Look at the economics behind it. The R&I, the research and innovation, accounted for 15% of all productivity gains in 2000 to 2013. With an annual increase of 0.2% of GDP in R&D investment would result in an annual increase of 1.1% in GDP, if five-fold return. So you can just see the impact of research investments into the overall GDP growth of the particular nation. So you can see the impact of this. India's present R&D, if you really look at it, is something like 0.7%. It's totaling around that number, whether it is 2014 or 2018. It has to be compared with the corresponding figures, like something like 2.4, 2.5 with US 4.3% with Israel or 4.2% with South Korea, all 3 times the proportion of GDP. This low level of investment that India is right now facing is the number of researchers is per lakh of the population is hardly 15. You just consider this with per lakh. You look at it corresponding to the number 423 in US, 825 in Israel, and other attendant impacts like the lower levels of patent application, scientific publication, and as I said in the beginning, growing a large and vibrant economy and uplifting society is suffering because of the fact that we don't have a vibrant research system. So that is the context in which we have tried to make a proposal to have a national research foundation. This national research foundation will be focused, of course, on research institutions as well as primarily the in university system. We have 900 and odd universities, and we need to considerably enhance the research capabilities of this university to overcome some of the deficiencies that I mentioned just now. So what is it that we have recommended? A fund to seed, the policy has a strong emphasis on catalyzing and energizing research, a fund to seed research in all universities and colleges so that synergies between research and quality education can be leveraged. This is, of course, well known that there is certainly a synergy between the quality of education and the research. NRA will fund research across all disciplines and significantly expand research and innovation. I want to say that we have done away with the idea, at least in the policy right now, that all universities will be supported for their research and innovation ideas. This includes also private institutions. So institutions like the Dayananda University certainly will be a part of a large ecosystem under the National Research Foundation. I'm sure with the type of heritage that you have in research, this should be something which will be a very welcome thing to move your own university to higher levels of performance. It, of course, have a provision to cover many themes: science, technology, social sciences, arts and humanities, and many more. It is not restricted to one area or other. The scope of work will be funding research through competitive peer review, building research activities, creating beneficial links. These are all things which are very well known what a research does, and ultimately research disseminating to this. But the most important thing is we need to create a strong linkage between the researchers, the government, and the industrial system. And this has to be done, as I said, through the 4 levels of pure applied, translational, and industrial research. So we need to create this as an institutionally sustainable mechanism. And that is one of the key elements of the National Research Foundation. I will say something about the energized, engaged, and capable faculty. The most important factor of the success of higher education institution is the quality and engagement of its faculty. This policy puts faculty back at the heart of the higher education. There is the rampant practice, I don't have to say this here, the contractual appointments, contract ad hoc, and things like that. And this has to be phased out. Very heavy teaching loads need to be rationalized to give faculty time to invest in themselves. Infrastructural support is other aspect of it. Even staff rooms are issues in many institutions. Faculty recruitment and development plan, we have given a fairly exhaustive discussion on this question of recruitment, development plan, career progression, compensation management to be there, as this should be all a part of the institutional development plan announced by the higher education institutions. Appropriately, it's a design permanent employment track system is another feature of the policy here. Faculty has to be autonomous, empowered to make curricular choices, and also how they make the assessment of the students with regard to their performance. And infrastructure of continuous professional development, we need to create much more effective infrastructure for this to strengthen the faculty system on a continuous basis. And ultimately, an appropriate design bridge courses for mid-career professionals to get into teaching will be the other part of it. So these are many things. These are just to give you a flavor of the kind of things that we have gone to the details about the faculty. And there is a fairly good discussion with respect to the faculty issues, as well as the type of policy that we would like the government to adopt. And teacher education in this connection is very critical. It will ensure that the rigorous teacher preparation within the vibrant multidisciplinary institution is the main recommendation we made. School teacher preparation will be done at the multidisciplinary unit. We are graduating the teaching, to prepare the teachers. We are graduating them to the higher education institution. Departments of education has to be set up in many universities to offer a 4-year integrated stage-specific BEd. BEd will be an undergraduate program of study covering both disciplinary and pedagogic teacher preparation courses for each stage of education. All subjects, including arts, sports, vocational education, and special education, will be mainstream. On par with other undergraduate degrees, the 4-year program will be eligible for master's and PhD programs. By 2030, only those institutions offering 4-year teacher education program can offer. The current 2-year program will continue on that basis. The 2-year program will be used for lateral entry, also subject teachers. That is also, there are many people who like to take up teachers later on after having got mastery over one subject or other. And specially designed courses for pedagogy for mid-career professionals is the other aspect of it. Standard and dysfunctional teacher education institutions, certainly we have strongly recommended to be shut down in this connection. The educational technology is another important part. This policy aims to appropriately integrate technology into all levels of education. Use of technology in education falls under broad, I can say 4 broad categories: improving teaching, learning, and evaluation, supporting teacher preparation and continuous teacher professional development, enhancing educational access to disadvantaged groups, streamlining education planning, administration, management, and teacher training in educational technology in this context is certainly very critical. So if you really look at the current COVID situation, you can see many of the improving teaching education, online education, synchronous mode, asynchronous mode, and these kind of things have been now well tested out. There are part of the earlier efforts, but they are now well tested out. Recommended systems for contributing and certifications, contact of few specialized teachers to virtual classrooms, national repository. So these are some of the actual actions that we witnessed as a part of the COVID-19 on the broad use of technology under the four categories which I have just delineated with respect to the use of technology, and there are many more that are going to come. If you really look at it in this connection, we need to also make choices on the technology. Any kind of technology can be not only be passed off as the technology that is useful for education and improving the education. So what we have tried to do, the committee has looked into the policy of what is the policy we should adopt with respect to the identifying appropriate technologies for education. A new National Educational Technology Forum will be set up with the following roles: to provide independent evidence-based advice to central and state government on the adoption of technology-based interventions, to build intellectual and institutional capacities in educational technology, envision strategic thrust areas in technology domain and promote education in them among educational institutions, and to articulate new directions for research and innovation for the use of technology for improving education outcomes. So these are very clear-cut direction that the national education, it's actually a kind of a forum where there will be a lot of deliberative in a sense, that this technology forum, it will exchange ideas, it will exchange experiences, and the best of them will be churned out, and there will be mechanisms to do research in this area. So this is what in fact, many institutions can host centers for this kind of forum. And I would even suggest that the Anand University is already thinking in terms of creating the faculty training with educational technology. And this could be a very good beginning to give concrete shape to these kind of ideas that we are recommending under the pact. In fact, I should say the MHRD is giving a lot of importance currently, Ministry of Education, in the context of trying to establish a forum of this kind and to make it as the clearinghouse for many of the technologies which otherwise will be taken without a proper assessment and analysis. The disruptive technology is another important thing. You know what is happening currently in the technology front. 1986, 1992 policy could not expect internet disruption, but this policy fully expects the educational system to face many technological, whether it is artificial intelligence, machine learning, things of that kind. Two major aspects related to such disruptive technology one should note: harnessing technology to improve educational outcome, whether it is human plus AI, hybrid, interactive learning system, or education in new and disruptive technologies, identifying them and preparing students in large numbers. This policy addresses both these and has gone into the details of what could be the initiation of an activity related to this. This is on the question of empowering the higher education institution, the governance part of it. All higher educations in the next 15 years will become autonomous, self-governing entities through a system of graded accreditation and graded autonomy. This is one of the important things, because we know that autonomy ultimately is the key for creation of a culture of excellence and innovation in higher education. With appropriate graded accreditation, Such institutions shall establish a board of governors. These are some of the things that have been already tested out in some of the institutions, but certainly all the institutions of higher education should bring in this kind of board of governors. They will be empowered to govern institution free of any external interference, make all appointments, including that of the head of the institution, and make decisions regarding the governance. BOG will be responsible and accountable to stakeholders through transparent self-disclosures. BOG to develop strategic institutional development plans, long term, medium term, as well as short term, which could be 15 years, 5 years, or 1 to 3 years, based on with the institution development and research programs, and parameters for quality and capacity, and improve organizational, financial, and human resource plans are to be assessed. And so you have parameters on which you can make these kind of assessments through the well laid out strategic institutional development plans to be approved by the Board of Governors. So these are some of the things I would like to say. As I told you, we have moved forward in terms of several reviews. The most important step that we have right now taken is to make sure that there is a proper appreciation of the various subtleties of the policy with respect to the various institutions, whether it is at the university level, independent autonomous institution, institute of excellence, and then other autonomous colleges and so on and so forth. So there is a major effort that is currently in progress with respect to explaining, clarifying, and also to look at some of the directions which could be the first level steps that we need to take for the implementation of this particular plan. The various action plans are being put together by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, which has been now redesignated as the Ministry of Education, in order to put the focus on education and training. And so Ministry of Education currently is identifying a set of action plan which is to be immediately undertaken, both at the central level and at the state level. Once the central level actions are also put in, some of them need to be put in the form of a legal structure. Once that is put down, then appropriately in more intense discussion with the state level as to how to adopt it with respect to the state universities and other higher education institutions need to be the next logical step. The work is already in progress, and certainly the ministry will be able to provide the necessary clarifications or the next step forward with respect to what individual institutions and universities can undertake in the immediate cases. But what is important to note is many of these policy points which you have said is translatable in terms of a ground level action, but they are connected with many other actions that is to be taken. So the entire exercise is one in which the individual policy actions are seen with respect to their relationship with other actions. I said that in the beginning, this is an interconnected policy. So you need to look at it in that connection and then come out with a comprehensive direction for individual institutions, which are the ones which are on the priority, both because of the fact that it's easy to start implementing it, and secondly, also the resources permitting that you can move further. So these are the kind of things. Resources itself, we have recommended that we should have something like 6% GDP, not a new number so far as education is concerned. But we think that given the gross national expenditure of 20% is what we should aim for the current 10% of the gross national expenditure. But I'm not telling that this has to happen in the very first year. This particular policy is for 10 years. And since it is for 10 years, we need to have a phased plan with regard to its implementation, but completing it by 7 to 8 years. And then in the next 10 years to see how the whole system works, what kind of fine tuning we need to do, what kind of mid-course correction we need to do. And that is exactly what it is. And so the present Council of the Education, which is there as a central government, that will be empowered with a better structuring and with a more definition of power, how to oversee this overall policy, how it is being shaping in various state levels and central level institutions, and what kind of reviews we need to conduct, what kind of mid-course correction we need to conduct, either a change in the vision itself that we need to, because of the dynamic nature of the education. These are things that will be addressed by an institutional mechanism that is to be created at the top. Currently, it is not there. On the other side, on the regulation also, we have made sure that the regulation is a tight but the light kind of approach. You have a light regulation but tight regulation. And the 4 broad areas of education, one is related to regulation, fund granting, accreditation, and frame setting. These are separated out to ensure that there are no cross linkages which will come in the form of what you may call as the overall interferences of their respective roles from the different areas. So this aspect of it also is clearly delineated, and this will be also need to be adopted by the various state universities when it comes to the regulatory aspects of the policy. So with these few things, I would like to once again thank the organizers, Dr. Murthy, Dr. Prem Chandra, and others for this unique opportunity to come and share my thoughts with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kangan. This is really, really wonderful. While you have been speaking, we've had a flood of questions. So with your permission, I'd just like to ask a few of them, if you have time to respond. I will start with a question from Lakshmi Jagannathan, and there's a related question from Dr. P.C. Deshmukh, so I'll ask them together. So Lakshmi asks, within this holistic education framework, can you tell us how we can foster the spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship? And Dr. Deshmukh's related question is that, while we have proved adept at adapting technologies from elsewhere, how do we foster this young generation to become contributors for technology and push the frontiers of technology?
That's an interesting question. I think this question can be answered through a long explanation, but I would like to cut it short by giving an example, which I think is very important. The question of how Steve Jobs, a very great innovator, and he was asked, how is it that he used to innovate the product so that the Apple becomes always the world's best in terms of many characteristics and features? Here the following to say about the role of engineering and in education and innovative approaches. He said, so far as engineering is concerned, we turn out very good engineers, exceptionally good engineers, designers, and so on. But many of them fail as innovators. Now, why does this happen? It's simply, but he said that they fail as innovators when the engineering and innovation comes into picture. These people who designed the Macintosh, according to him, were not only some of the best computer systems and computer technology engineers, but these people were very well versed in this kind of things and looking at a problem with respect to these multiple dimensions beside the engineering aspect. It is this character of the engineers, their ability to absorb, appreciate and absorb the broader characteristic of a system and integrate it into the product that they are developing, that makes all the difference to make the product innovative. So that was his answer to the fact why Macintosh succeeded as a product. It's not only because of the engineering part of it, but because of the multiplicity of dimensions of knowledge that they could bring to bear. That is precisely what I mean when I say we talk of a liberal education, a multidisciplinary education. You are laying the foundation for a thinking which is very broad, and you can tap from that thinking process, knowledge part, several elements for bringing in innovation into a product which otherwise would have been only an engineering effort and not broader than that in terms of a human element. And in fact, you same thing I've tried to say this with respect to medical education. Certainly, you've got exceptionally good medical doctors, but how do you deal with the patient? How do you deal with the psychology of patient? How do you look at the other aspects of the society, which are an integral part of a doctor's service to the society? So there is something much more holistic than just learning that particular subject. These are the kind of examples that I would like to quote to make sure that we appreciate the importance of a multidisciplinary education in the overall context of even defining majors and minors as you teach them in the undergraduate education.
Thank you, Dr. Rangan. I think you have rightly identified that we should do as much as we can to make use of the flexibility that the policy provides us. And we as educationists now have a role to be creative in how we design these processes. Thank you for that answer. I have another very interesting question. This one comes from Dr. Srinivas, who's the Dean of our School of Engineering. He asks that for teachers to adapt to these new requirements, that will require significant unlearning before new learning can happen. So is there a formal model for this suggested in the NEP for teacher training?
We have not given any operational models in the policy, because that is something we have said very clearly that at different levels of the teaching, you start with an Anganwadi. There is a very ECC, the early childhood care and education. You started the Anganwadi, you start your school education now from 3 years and not at 6 years. The teachers who will teach in the Anganwadi, we have found at least the experts whom we consulted with respect to the early childhood education, the cognitive science, the necessity to be a play-based curriculum, imagination-based curriculum. They said that a 6 months curricular framework can be written down for this kind of a thing, which will transform the Anganwadi teachers who are already a graduate. Mind you, I'm not talking about people at the much lower level. If you have got a graduate degree in Anganwadi for a Anganwadi, there are many master's degree, I understand, even in the Anganwadi school system. So if that is there, we can orient them in the 6 months towards a method of teaching which can bring the essence of what the early childhood care and education has to be in the 3 years to 6 years, which is critical before you go into the first and second grade as a part of the 5-year foundational course. So that is one aspect of it where there is some level of understanding of what we should do to transform Anganwadi. When it comes to the school teachers, certainly the question of orienting them with respect to a new curricular framework and pedagogy is going to make a difference. So what we are trying to, the policy says by 2021, we are going to have a national curricular framework and a school state curricular framework, which will define what the curriculum has to be. And ultimately from the curriculum, you also derive the pedagogy. So for the pedagogy, the autonomy of the teachers is concerned, what we are trying to do is to make sure that the teacher in a classroom knows precisely how to convey the concept of the curriculum through a pedagogy. And this is where we have given autonomy to the teachers to create their own way of conveying, their own way of doing with that pedagogy. So that is an open issue, how the teacher, for pedagogical training, curricular training, starting with the curricular framework which is given to you. There is going to be specialized institutions which will bring them into the fold to give them that kind of an orientation. But ultimately, it is the originality of the teachers that it matters. As you move towards the higher and higher education, certainly the process is a little different. But then you are teaching mature students. Teachers, they know how to fill up the teacher or the teacher, how to interact with the teachers and how to get the best out of the teachers. Besides, with all the other kinds of things, including the blended learning, or which Viraj, you are very much familiar with. So these kind of things are certainly the other part of it. So the solution is not specific for Anganwadi level. You need one type. In the case of school education, you need another type. So for the higher education is concerned, you need third type. And also you need vocational and professional education, which may have similar thing. But ultimately, the curricular framework is available to you. Your independence in terms of autonomy for a curriculum as well as definition and pedagogy is something that you have to define. We are not given clear-cut ground rules with regard to how do you come out with a pedagogy. There is some element of a human element into it. Exactly, I said about what Steve Jobs said. The engineer knows his engineering job. How does he bring in the innovation by bringing further inputs into it? I think that part of the pedagogy, I think we should leave it to the teacher to operate rather than be imposing on them how to deal with it.
Thank you, sir. And I think, again, I think it's wonderful to see strong statements in support of the central role that teachers play in the policy, and I think, again, providing this framework, as you rightly said, that's the job of the policy, to provide this framework, and then the detailing happens at the implementation step. So thank you for that answer. I have a rather, I would say, a left field question from Dr. Suresh Rangan, who is from our MBA department, but I will add a twist to it, perhaps to make it more directly related to our conversation here. So his actual question was regarding, the concern around space as a battlefield, and is there a way to prevent this at this nascent stage itself before sort of space becomes a battlefield? But I want to bring it, connect it a little bit to our conversation in regards to education. So if we take this as a specific example of one of these complex issues, I mean, there are many facets, of course, to this, and it's obviously an issue at the global level. How does a society as rich and diverse as ours grapple meaningfully with such a complex question? We need to have, of course, an informed citizenry to grapple with such issues. So I want to ask his question, Dr. Rangan's question, to you in the following sense. I mean, what is it that this policy is going to provide for the country to allow us to grapple more effectively with such complex questions? That is my question, sir.
I think it's a very beautiful, you have framed it very beautifully, Viraj. I think, let me tell you one interesting aspect of the ability to grasp things which are broader. This is precisely what we were worried about when we started the formulation of the policy. How much a youngster, when he comes out of the college, higher education, is he prepared to look at the broader issues? It could be related to shooting down a satellite communication system. It could be related to the use of a missile hitting a target on the ground 5,000 kilometers away. It could be related to finding a solution to a COVID, a vaccine. But the vaccine's efficacy, efficiency, and success will have parameters which has to be ultimately seen with against the schedules as well as the says finances. So you start building up the dimensions of looking at a problem much beyond looking at whether it's a PCT way of detecting the COVID, or whether it should be antigen way of detecting the COVID, or whether a vaccine fulfills the requirement. What is the definition of a vaccine fulfilling? How many dimensions are there to find out? There is an ideal vaccine, there is a practical a vaccine in the practical world, and there is a compromises in the practical world. And to what extent this is a question which comes touches social, cultural, health, economic, political. So you just look at the moment you open up this kind of a thing, you are talking of multiplicity of expertise. The question is, I need not be, being a space scientist, I need not be an economics expert. The fact that I have to pose a problem to the economists, I have to formulate that problem. So my liberal education or the multidisciplinary education at least helped me to formulate such of those problems so that an expert can look at it with the confidence that this problem is a realistic problem. I cannot just put some ideas in my hat office and throw it to him and say, don't look at this particular thing. So the even definition of a problem of a multidimensional character, how well you can formulate it, how tightly you can frame it, and how can you convey it to a specialist who can then work on it. These are all the kind of abilities. So when you talk of a space system, the kinetic systems or a missile systems and those kind of a thing, you are only talking about technology. You are able to talk about certain capability, but attached to is the question whether how is it seen by your adversary? What is adversary strengths and weaknesses? And if you do this, is it possible that you will get a retaliation? If that retaliation, what is the models that are available on which this retaliation could be devastating for the country which took this initial risk of doing? These are questions to be analyzed, and this just cannot be done by one. If I am only a space scientist working on rocket and looking at the propulsion system, I just don't have an answer for this, mind you. So every space scientist won't have an answer for the type of question that you're asking. But what is important, I want to say, is the more and more such demands are coming into the challenges of youngsters to address problems which are holistic. You look at the global change. It is simply not a horrendous problem. The problem of not atmosphere, not climate change, not the sea level change, not the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, not the question of a health system, not the question of a social system, not the question of economics. You look at the kind of dimensions that in global change can throw about. How many people can model it in its totality and start getting it? Or how many people have to come together, and how well can they interface between the totality so that they can make an effective system? These are the questions that I am trying to pose. And when I talk of an undergraduate education, when I talk of a postgraduate education, I try to bring in the question of holisticity and interdisciplinarity, the question of liberal arts education. These are the questions that it equips me to answer this kind of a thing in a scientific and logical way. It is not off the hat. And this is precisely what the modern education that we have tried to recommend is aiming for, not by producing only an engineer who knows how to put a particular IC into a thing and solder it, and he knows the input-output relationship at that IC level. That is not that is certainly possible in today's education, but that is not what is today's future education has to be.
Thank you, sir. This was such a wonderful response. And I recall that, during the policy deliberations itself, there were similar questions that were raised. And again, I recall the beautiful way in which you have articulated this point. And I really would like to thank you for sharing that with all of us here. I'm very conscious, sir, of your time. There are many other questions, but I would have to maybe restrict ourselves to maybe one or two more with your permission. There are two very similar questions, one by Dr. Puneet Kariyappa and one by Dr. KG Hemlata. So I'm going to ask them together. They're basically, it's a follow-up perhaps to the point we were just discussing. As you have laid out this wonderful vision for where we need to go, the natural question for everyone who is in the present system is, to what extent is the implementation going to affect us? So another way of asking it is, which are the elements of the policy that you see are going to be implemented most rapidly? Where do you see, the first few important steps happening that would start impacting students within the next few years? Are there some specific areas that you see are likely to be implemented quickly?
Well, I think the early childhood care and education, I think, is the starting point for everything, because we are really talking of numeracy and literacy. 5 crores currently are out of educational system. If we allow them to go like the way it is going, 10 crores will be added in another 5 years. And this is not the kind of the number that we can accept in this country for literacy and numeracy. So you need to bring in the early childhood care and education right in. It's not a big deal. The infrastructures are not very complicated. We are already a play-based, activity-based, and things of that kind. And if the teachers also needs an orientation, but not to the extent that the higher school education wants. So first and foremost is to make sure that we make investment. I am unfortunately coming back to the earliest part of the education instead of the higher education with whom you are dealing with, only because of the fact if the bottom is shaky, I don't think that the higher education will be strong and solid. So this is one aspect of it. School education certainly can be transformed. There is no reason why with the current systems can be slowly moved into the domain of a 5+3+3+4. That is possible. The knowledge base is there. Once the curricular framework is imaginatively written down, which I am sure will happen in the next year, and there are very good people who will work on this fruit, but it's not very high hanging also. It's somewhere you can really capture it and still transform. This is the second part of it. Third is the thing where I am fascinated, because multiplicity of sharing resources from in an undergraduate career, you have to be shared between the multiplicity of resources that you yourself have invested. And wherever you have a gap, the policy provides for sharing the resources of even central government. The private institutions are not forbidden to use public funded institutions' capability. There's a policy framework there. This need to be invoked. The government has to be sensitive about it, and you people have to be sensitive about it, and it's possible to do that. I think that will enable you to start working on a liberal approach to education or multidisciplinary and the holistic education as a concept. You can start in the next year or two. That is also possible. Then, and it can transform the undergraduate education. And when it transforms the undergraduate education, and the number of people coming out of it, whether it is, I think physics people about 40% find jobs, engineering about 50%, many other areas it is 20% and 30%. If you just look at the kind of numbers that will change with respect to their completeness of the knowledge, and therefore they are really useful in the context of a broader job market and also an evolving job market, I think this transformation is possible. I am not only doing it with respect to the job market, but the basic competence of the youngsters with respect to appreciate the issues even beyond the jobs. We have talked about the constitutional values, national ethos, and many other things. I think we should not look at it only because of the way we are trying to create nationalism. These are all part and parcel of a knowledge base which is critical. Ultimately, some of them go directly because of your knowledge. Some of them interfere in your knowledge indirectly, but they are very relevant, and it can be more forceful to get those kind of inputs, even though you may not be very conscious that it is operating in your system because you learned it. So that kind of a thing you can create for undergraduate education. So far as research is concerned, I think even as you try to create the National Research Foundation and ultimately start competing for research grants, I think this is something with the college, the university should identify local issues, local programs, and we should also work with the state government because you are a state university, and certainly see how we can get funds. And this kind of funds we have to get it from outside also. It's not that it's only internally put or it is coming from government. There are many ways in which these kind of funds are there. Chris Gopalakrishnan has given 200 crores into brain research in Institute of Science. You may not immediately jump into that kind of number, but there is enough opportunity to do fundamental research, applied research, and translational research. I think you should really look for those kind of things, areas which are relevant in the local condition. It could be related to Bangalore. It could be some issues related to Bangalore. Could be a very good research program. We don't seem to be really thinking about this kind of. The moment we think of research, we think of a research program, pure research. The moment we think of pure research, we think of papers. The papers, whether we get into the peer-reviewed thing, and that number whether we can increase. This is only one model of a research. There is several models of research, and we need to invoke some of those new models with respect to its applicability in the society and also the economics of doing this with respect to the outcomes. So these are the 4 or 5 points I see straight away. So far as the governance is concerned, autonomy is concerned, is left to you. The more autonomous you are, the more you are able to make decisions, and those decisions are done with good academics who know this business. And I'm happy to see that you have at the top, even at the level of pioneering people at the top, you have people who know this business of education. So I don't think you're going to grow up in the dark so far as what to do and what not to do. And I think that is a very good strength for the Anand institutions, and this can be brought into picture. So with this kind of thing, 5 or 6 points which I said, there is enough food for thought, enough actions to be followed up. And I think it all depends on your will and determination to take it up forward. I think it is workable. I don't think everything is going to be dictated by money. There is some money that is needed, but I think many fine-tuning can be done to the existing system and optimized in a way in which the system will start moving in the new direction of an NAP 2020 without continuously worrying about money and resources.
Thank you, Dr. Rangan. I know we're out of time and there are many questions. I have to apologize to the people who asked such excellent questions. There are many, many interesting ones that I'm afraid we don't have time for. But the last 2 points that you mentioned, of course, utilizing resources and being making use of the autonomy that we have as a group of institutions. Of course, these are points that our Vice Chairman, Dr. Prem Chandra Sagar, has articulated beautifully. So I would like to thank you and hand over to Dr. Prem Chandra Sagar. I'm sure he has a few words to add to this, because as I said, this is something that he has articulated, and this is something that we are looking forward very much to. From my side, thank you very much. Dr. Prem Chandra Sagar, please, if you have any points to add, please do so.
Thank you, Dr. Viraj. I would like to, before I would like to add a few words, I would like to, once again, thank Dr. Kasturi Rangan for the wonderful words of wisdom that he has enthralled all of us. Sir, when DSU became a reality, one of the difficult challenges that we had was, because we were in the past, working in silos, essentially the School of Engineering working on its own and the School of Humanities on its own. I mean, what we felt was, the process of learning fresh was something more unique for us rather than the process of de-learning. So when DSI, which had over 5.5 decades of exposure towards education, and it was easy for us to just change name boards, we did not want to go through, because essentially we wanted to bring in this whole new thing that you have very nicely articulated and emphasized in the National Education Policy. Holistic education becomes a very important aspect for us to actually go across. I mean, I myself am a medical doctor, but I've understood the challenges that we have had in the field of medicine. As you rightly said, communication becomes a very important part. And we also need to understand the fact that, when we say medical doctors, they're invariably, one of the brightest kids to get on into med school. But when I recall myself, when I came out of med school, probably though, when I entered med school, I was reasonably good in basic sciences. But when I got out of med school, I completely lost out of even acknowledging the importance of basic sciences. Well, the same thing goes on in various ways. I always believe that the natural sciences and the social sciences must have a dance together. There can be an interdisciplinary approach within the natural sciences, whether it is science and technology, whether it's engineering sciences, whether it is management sciences that can come through, or even technology and medicine that can intertwine. But what is more important is to understand this beautiful mix, which you very nicely articulated in the beginning of your wonderful lecture, that we need to understand all the aspects which will create an exposure of understanding both sides. That is essentially the concept of liberal education or holistic education, to know because as humans we are extraordinarily talented. Somewhere across the point, we begin to work in silos and forget that the importance that we forget the importance of the other side. So I think one of the nicest things that which you explained was how Steve Jobs was able to create a great product, a great company, which believed in the wonderful marriage of science as well as aesthetics, as well as simplicity, minimalism. I think that is where DSU wants to embark itself on. When we would like to create a platform where doctors can work with engineers and they can design instrumentation and they can understand also the psychological part of human life, the essence of human life and the purpose of human life. I think that is the footsteps we would like to follow, sir. And once again, on behalf of the entire group of Dayanand Sagar institutions and the university, would like to extend my deep gratitude and thanks to you, sir, for having laid the foundations for a great vision that this country needed. This was something that I always felt. We were great. We had great institutions like All India Institute of Medical Sciences. We had great institutions like IITs. But somewhere, they never worked. But when we looked across in, the space across the world, where we found that the engineer worked with the doctor worked with the social scientist. And I think the path that you have laid forward in the wonderful policy that you have helped for and the government, which has been kind enough to adopt this policy, will bring in remarkable changes that the way we would go forward. And I'm sure the demographic dividend that we're all talking of will be best exploited, because for us, sir, is the next 15, 20 years are going to be the most important part for us, because at some point of time, if we do not capture the demographic dividend, then invariably it will turn out to become demographic deficit. So I'm sure, sir, with the policy, with the national education policy, which is now adopted by the government and very nicely articulated under your leadership, will bring in refreshing changes and guide this nation to great heights. Once again, sir, I would like to extend my deep gratitude and thanks.
Come. Thank you, sir. This is Prasamurthy. Can I request Sri Jairaj, sir, to say a few words?
Good afternoon, Dr. Kasturi Rangan, sir. It's a great honor to see you virtually. I haven't had the pleasure of interacting with you for some time, but I would like to tell our Honorable Vice Chairman and Vice Chancellor and others that I have seen you in action in other domains, such as envisioning a new Bangalore, the Western Ghats, in the Planning Commission, and everywhere you go, you bring that rare quality of versatility, inventiveness, and inquisitiveness that has also found its way into the NEP. And sir, salute to you for trying to build a better India, and thank you for coming to DSU and inspiring us today. And thank the Vice Chancellor also for bringing such a notable personality to our campus. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Kasturi Rangan.
Request Professor Kincha. Professor Kincha for 1 minute, sir. Kincha, sir. Professor Kincha, sir. Okay. We will go to the last part of the session, is word of thanks. Let me take this opportunity to thank Dr. Kasturi Rangan, a renowned space scientist, possibly one of the very few who have received all the 3 Padma Awards. And he is the one who has done tremendous service to this country in various capacities. Sir, I would like to tell you this. Dayanand Sagar University is trying its best to create a unique position for itself in the years to come. We are so thankful to you for agreeing to deliver this lecture on NEP 2020, a new knowledge framework. It was a beautiful narration of the entire policy in a matter of 40 to 45 minutes. That was phenomenally top-class thing. This lecture is delivered at a time when India is making a paradigm shift towards new education policy. I see the new education policy has a national character and global outlook. I think you're trying to bring back the glory of the ancient Indian education, and it was done very, very well in NEP 2020. We are privileged to listen to you on this day, because you are the one who are laying a path. You are working out a path for this paradigm shift in India. So on behalf of DSU, Dayanand Sagar University, management, staff and students, we sincerely and gratefully thank you for making time amidst your busy schedules to deliver this lecture. I know you are, in the last few months, you have been asked for this lecture by everyone, and they want to listen from you alone. I think I know the amount of the schedules that you have in your busy schedule, you accommodated with our request. We are so grateful to you. As a token of love, respect, and appreciation, we request you to accept a small memento from Dr. Viraj Kumar, who is with you right now at this point of time, representing DSU community over there. I request Professor Viraj to hand over.
Thank you. Thank you, Viraj. Thank you, sir. We have one more.
I take this opportunity to thank Honorable Chancellor Dr. Hemchandra Sagar, who is been observing this particular lecture, and also Dr. Premchandra Sagar, the visionary and extremely dynamic Pro-Chancellor of DSU, for his gracious presence, welcome, opening remarks. I recognize the presence of other board members like Tinti Sagar, Rohan Sagar, our secretary, Sri Gadeswamy, our evangelist, Professor H.P. Kincha, our advisor, Professor Jairaj, and several other dignitaries. We submit our thanks to all the inviters who responded to our invite to attend this lecture. So I'm extremely happy to tell you that more than 600 people were part of this particular lecture, both on Zoom as well as the YouTube live. I think it was a great response for this lecture. We also would like to thank Dr. Viraj Kumar, the research professor in computer science and engineering of DSU,
Very good,
for assisting in organizing this lecture. Our thanks are also due to the heads of departments of various DSI group of institutions, Dr. Putmadappa, our registrar, Dr. Srinivas, Dean of School of Engineering, our esteemed Janardhan sir, who is the Pro-Vice Chancellor, Muthuchilan sir, Pro-Vice Chancellor of Dayanand Sagar University, and several board members and the academic council members. And also we recognize the presence of all our deans, chairpersons, faculty colleagues, non-teaching staff, and students. Finally, I would like to also thank Baishali, Dr. Baishali, who did the comparing for this event. We thank you, Madam, immensely.
Thank
Finally, we thank one and all for this, for attending this lecture and making this a grand success. Sir, finally, our pranams to you on behalf of DSU.
Namaskara, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Namaskara, sir.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Jairaj. Long time.
Wonderful, wonderful. You look younger by the day, sir.
You are no exception.
Wonderful, sir.
Thank
Take
you,
care,
sir. Thank
sir.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
Take
sir.
care of
Namaste, sir.